Hello, this is Sabine Minsky, and you're joining Your Spirited Life. Today, I have the pleasure of having Steve Wentworth with me. He is a spiritual teacher and an empowerer. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sabine. It's good to be here.
So, can you tell us a little bit about how you started off on this path? It seems that you've been delving in it for quite a while.
Yeah, it's as far as my journey is concerned,
Yes.
I've always been aware of I've always been aware that there's something more than the physical, and this goes right the way back to when I was a child. As I was a child, I had my first out of body experience when I was 4, so it was quite apparent to me that there was something else going on from a very early age. And I've become aware that my grandmother, she passed when I was 4 as well. And I became very aware that she was there. According to my mum, she could hear me talking to her at night time. So yeah, I was very much aware that there was something else from a very young age. But as I grew up, the things that started happening, I felt that they were maybe out of my control a bit. And I just wanted, like any teenager, I wanted to be normal. I didn't want these things to happen. I wanted to fit in with everybody else. So from my point of view, I kind of put everything like that on the back burner, really. And I tried to pursue a very material lifestyle. And I had my own company, nice cars, nice house, holidays to the Caribbean all the time. So there were all kinds of, it was a very different lifestyle to the one that I have now. And it wasn't until all of that came to an abrupt end and the business went, and the relationship that I was in at the time ended as well. Mm-hmm. And I had to reevaluate everything. And it seemed to be that the further that I went from my path, the more difficult life became. And it wasn't until I rediscovered my spiritual side and started to follow my spiritual path again, that life became what it is today and became so much more fulfilling. Mm-hmm. While I don't believe that there's anything wrong with people having being financially secure and having a good lifestyle, it's when that becomes the focus of our attention and we begin to maybe worship money more than we start to, it becomes too big a part of our lives. So I think getting the right balance is always a good thing. So that's my journey, and that's how I came back to my path. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of gone from there, really.
Now, if we go back to that period of your life in which you were seeking more worldly avenues, how did you feel inside? Can you go back into that period of your life? Was there a tingling, a calling inside, or were you completely,
I was still very much aware of the spirit world, and I was very much aware of my spiritual nature. I tried to act as if it wasn't part of me. I think it's always a part of us. You can try to kid yourself as much as you want. You can try to go down a completely different road. But if it's not you, then it's this awful conflict. I wasn't happy. And that was the strange thing. It was, as much as I achieved, as successful as my company had been, and as wealthy and as great a lifestyle as I had, I wasn't happy at all. And I think that says a lot for it, really. I was very much aware that things were going on, and I was still having what we would probably call psychic experiences and things like this. But it was still very much out of my control. It wasn't something that I was able to work with and learn to, say, for example, I could walk into a room and I would start to feel other people's energies, and I would start to get pictures of maybe their life experiences and things that had happened to them as well, to the point where I actually felt quite uncomfortable, because one of the strange things about a lot of psychic phenomena and the way that it works is you kind of gravitate. The way I see it is, you've got a life path, And everybody goes through, when they have a tragic or something happens in their life, you get a dent that happens in their life. And if you have a kind of psychic awareness, a lot of the time, you just naturally go to the biggest dent.
Yes.
So, and the problem is throughout our lives, a lot of the times it's the tragic events that have the greatest impact on us. So if you do have a psychic awareness, you have to learn to control it, because otherwise you are naturally gravitating towards these dips in people's lives, and it's not a pleasant experience. So I've learned now to kind of switch it off when it's not required, and when it is required, I use it for intuition, and I use it for being able to get a deeper and a greater perspective on a situation or a person or whatever. So I use it in a much more structured way now.
Somehow the image that comes to my mind when you use that picture of the dents is if you look at the life of a tree, you'll see in its rings what it has lived. So there's this sense that we do, carry our history, and somehow, as you said, often we as healers will be more attracted to the tragic events, the difficult events. Somehow the question that I have inside a lot, and maybe some of the people in our audience have that too, how do you approach people without the inside, the feeling bad for somebody in your day-to-day life? Like, I mean, you've gone through a whole sequence of learning how to work with your gifts, and somehow I feel like some people would like to hear you on this today.
Do you mean as far as work, when you meet people that you don't have that kind of...
Yeah, not clients, like people on the street.
Yeah. I tell you what, years ago, that really was an issue. It was difficult, because I did feel all of that energy and all of those emotions, and the strongest emotions you would feel the most as well. But now I don't. And one of the most powerful tools that I've discovered is meditation. And meditation has enabled me to focus my mind at the right time, and to allow myself to experience something at the appropriate time as well. It's given me this insight into my own mind. I can't tell you that there is a particular technique that I use. It's just been that through meditating, I've been able to discover myself and to discover my spiritual self. And that's enabled me to have a degree of... The strange thing is to control it, you have to let go. And it sounds like it's a bit of a conflict, but to be able to control those insights that you get from people, you do just have to let go and let go to the universe and say, okay, I accept that this is how I am. And for some strange reason, it works just by letting go.
Well, perhaps the letting go is more in the mental plane of, this isn't logical. Why am I getting all this? Why me?
Yeah.
Perhaps some people are still going through that.
Yeah.
And then it's the flowing through other areas of our being, of our energy, of our body.
Yeah.
I mean, the heart will control in a way that's completely different to our mind, right?
Absolutely. There's one thing that you can't do with this is apply too much logic to it, because it isn't always logical. And I have got naturally the kind of mind, a very inquisitive mind. I always want to know why. I think my mum, when I was a kid, bought me a book called Why Does it? I think it was just called Why. When I was a child, I always asked why. And with this, you can't always do that. It's about just accepting. There aren't always answers to everything, or there aren't always answers that we need to know at this moment in time. So yeah.
In my own experience, or when I have clients who ask me, more fundamental questions in their spiritual journey, somehow if I end up with that, like a long email like this, I know the logic is still like predominant.
Yeah.
somehow when we go into the heart, and one of the other speakers also touched upon this, it's how you go from a really long sentence to just a few words, because the heart doesn't have much vocabulary.
Absolutely.
It doesn't need
Absolutely.
it.
This is one of the things that I struggle with, because for me, I could probably I'm in the middle of writing a book at the moment, and for me, I could sum it all up with just be.
Yes.
That's it. And it really is. That's the answer to everything. Just be, and that's it. There's no more. It's just that's the whole answer to everything for me. It's about us just being. So I completely agree with you on that. Totally.
Could you touch upon the the idea of needing protection? Some of our listeners might still be at a stage, and it goes in spirals. So, you know, I still find myself in stages where I'm like, ooh, do I need to protect myself from this energy, from this person? How do you invite people to not be not fold back into fearing what they're sensing and what they're seeing?
Yeah, I think the whole idea of protection, really, if you believe you need protection, you need protection. Um, from my own perspective, I believe that God or the universe or spirit guides, angels, my friends and family in the spirit world are a far better place to protect me from anything than I am. And I just have faith that I'm okay. And because I have faith, I am. And that's it, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think that rituals are important to some people, and they give something power. And I'll never say to people, no, don't protect yourself, because if that's what their core belief is, then they need to go through that ritual of protection if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I don't, because I feel completely protected. So yeah, I think it's human nature, really, the whole protection thing. But yeah, it's I think that as long as you do have faith, but having said that, I think it's perfectly natural for all of us to question our faith sometimes.
Yeah.
And that maybe that is when we wobble a little bit, and then we think maybe I need protection or maybe I don't, and it's just human nature.
Mm-hmm.
We like to put a lot of labels on things. We like to label things as good and label things as bad, and we have this kind of whereas when we look at nature, you wouldn't say that nature is good or bad. Nature is just nature. It's a human thing to put labels on everything, and it's kind of this good bad thing. I think that it's just life or the spirit world or whatever. I think that I think we're all okay. I think we're fine.
And I like how you touch upon revisiting our beliefs and the way that we do things. It's I think that's at the core of evolution, if that's the word that we want to use, or just
Absolutely.
growth and discovery of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important that we do revisit our beliefs, and there's nothing wrong in turning around and saying, actually, do you know what? I think I've changed my mind. I think something's changed, and I think that I believe something different now. I think that's absolutely fine to do that. And actually, I think it shows that you are the kind of person who is able to have that self-awareness. And if you're able to say, I think maybe it doesn't mean that you're saying that you were wrong. It just means that now you have different information and different feelings and experiences that lead you to believe something different. And so I think to revisit our beliefs is always a really healthy thing to do. I can absolutely hand on heart tell you that I have my whole spiritual evolution and journey. It wouldn't have happened if I wasn't prepared to analyze and look at my beliefs and see what feels right to me. It's the only way that I've been able to progress and move forward. So yeah, it's a really good thing to revisit your beliefs.
Yeah. And those few words, see how I feel. I think that's our greatest guide through it.
Yeah.
Somehow the field of our whether it be our spirituality or our religion, that's often like the fort that we're the least ready to look at and reconsider, but
Yeah,
that the basis of
absolutely.
our view of everything
Yeah. I
about life.
think it's a cultural thing. It comes from society, and it also comes from the way that we've been brought up. And, particularly if you come from a very strict religious background, or you come from the background, an atheist, and you were brought up with absolutely, well, it's still a belief. It's not a belief in the sense that there's something else greater than us. I think that when you come from those backgrounds, to make that leap into uncharted territory, which is basically what we're doing on a spiritual journey. There isn't a book to guide us. There's our feelings. There's the sense of what we feel is just and unjust and right and wrong. And we have to be guided by something that is it's not in black and white. And that can actually be quite uncomfortable for people. I've met people that have said, who are, that come from a very strict religious background, and they've said, how can you know what's right or wrong? How can you do that? And it really is about complete empowerment. And this is what being on your spiritual path is about. It's about saying, it's taking the leap of faith, literally, because you have to say, I'm being guided, and I am being guided by that higher power. And there is no rule book. You just have to go with what that higher power guides you with. So yeah, it's a difficult one, and I can understand why, from those the cultural perspective, it's not encouraged to necessarily go off on your own path and your own path of spiritual discovery, or really any kind of personal discovery. So yeah, it's and I think it's because from other people's perspective, it isn't controlled. And it's something that is very much our own individual path, and it's under our own control. It's true empowerment.
If we go back to your dark night of the soul, I don't know if you like that expression.
That's a good word. That's a good way of saying it. Yeah.
I was wondering, did you fall completely into spirituality 100%, and that was all that was around you? Like, because you speak of finding balance afterwards, and one thing that I do see happening are people jumping full on into spirituality and just kind of actually not empowering themselves through it, but rather disempowering themselves to everything around, and not having any stability in it. Yeah. Is that something you often come across?
I see it very often, yeah. I think people make this mistake. When they're looking for their spiritual truth, they start looking all around them for all the answers. They start looking externally for a guru, or somebody that's going to lead them, or a book that's going to teach them, or a course or something like this. And that's what they keep doing. And while it's good to learn, what they're actually doing is they're neglecting that inner soul. And as long as you can really look within and understand that it doesn't matter how many crystals you have, or it doesn't matter, whether you...
I do love my crystals.
There you go. I've got crystals too. But, and again, it doesn't matter how many certificates you have. At the end of the day, it's about that relationship with your soul and your relationship with the universe, or God, or whatever you want to call it. It's that's the true path. And so for me, real spiritual empowerment is about really being able to its independence, in its self-belief, and it's not looking for all of the answers externally. You will find some of the answers externally, but you have to realize that the real truth lies within each of us, and we just have to look, really.
So how can we build up the patience for that and the strength to start looking inside and developing that in parallel and in unison with all that is available to us. Because I mean, frankly, we're at an age where there's an overload of many things, including spiritual paths and courses and all that you just mentioned. It's kind of mind-boggling at some point.
Yeah, it's I think again this comes down to your intuition and your whether something feels right to you. There's again, it's human nature for us to say, you know, I hear it all the time. There's one truth. There's one way of doing it, and that is the only way. It's our human minds make us think of things in terms of being very narrow, and I just have this feeling that from a universal perspective, you can have truths that appear to conflict to us, but actually are absolutely compatible. So I think you have to, when you're finding your own spiritual truth, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the same for everybody else. And it kind of leads me on to you get this sometimes when people find their truth, they want to scream it from the rooftops and they want to grab people and say, listen, this is my truth. Yeah.
They won't even say, this is my truth. This is the truth. There can be some excited arrogance sometimes even.
Absolutely. And it's great to have that passion, but you have to realize that it's everybody has different truths. And when you try and ram that down somebody's throat, usually what you'll find is that people will you'll have completely the wrong kind of response, or a response that you don't want. So yeah, I think it's really important that people always bear in mind that when you find your truth, it's your truth. It's not going to be for somebody else. So I think that's something that we always have to bear in mind and have that compassion and that kind of perspective as well, that a lot of different truths can coexist together and it doesn't take anything away from what we found.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Now, when it comes to women in spiritual growth and discovering what empowerment is to them, have you seen some specificities for them in terms of whether it be difficulties in accepting that empowerment, or I don't know what you've seen. I'd be very curious in that.
I've run a lot of workshops, and predominantly I'd say probably about 85 to 90% of the people that I see are women. Mm-hmm. And I think there is naturally women are sensitive, and I think that they are able to express themselves in a different way to men. Men do have that kind of the boundaries that are set by their, I have to be a provider, I have to be stable, I have to appear to be the provider. And for a man to start looking at something that is spiritual or a bit airy-fairy, suddenly he's not that solid rock anymore. So it starts to call that into question for a man. So I think it's important that women do understand that perspective when they're talking to their partners or their friends or their family, because men do come from a very different point of view on this. It doesn't mean that they're not open. It just means so much more on so many different levels. So I think that it's about having that respect for each other and different perspectives and where we're all coming from. But then when you bear that in mind, so say it's, your partner at home and you don't have that kind of two-way flow of conversation about your spiritual path, or you might be mocked, or you might find that it's not taken seriously. Just remember that from their perspective sometimes, because their instant rejection of what you say, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they're thinking or that's how they feel underneath it all. It represents something far greater. And in fact, it threatens men, I think, more than it does to women from the point of view of from that shaking that solid foundation. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a trap that men find themselves, not all men, and I think there's a lot of us that are prepared to look a lot deeper and to explore that side of us. But I think that women do find it quite difficult a lot of the time when they're not getting that support from home. And I think that's why it is important that people do try to naturally gravitate towards each other, and so that you can get that support from people that you know, or from groups on the internet or friends. The great thing about the internet these days is that we're all connected, kind of on a spiritual level, and across the internet now electronically. So we can always meet like-minded people and make friends, even if we're in different countries, and we can still have that connection and that discussion, and we're able to explore our spiritual truth that way. But I do find that when I hold my workshops, a lot of women, it's their only chance to be able to express themselves, because they don't get that opportunity at home. So it is important to have that outlet, and to recognize that not everybody is ready to hear what you've got to say. It doesn't always necessarily mean it's a male-female thing, because you may get exactly the same response from a sister or mother or whoever, or a friend. So we're not all at that point in our spiritual evolution to be able to be ready to hear that.
So you've actually given some really good pointers to our listeners on how to start with the patience of knowing that we're developing our own truth, and we're still probably destabilized in some ways in it, and how to bring it into our homes, into our families. So how does this inner path, this inner development of our spiritual truth, how do you invite people to expand even further into it, so that in the end we're looking for alignment, right, as much as possible between our inner truth, our soul, and what we're actually building in our lives. So how to increase that movement and that alignment?
Okay, again, it is about giving yourself to it. It really is about letting go, and about saying, okay, one of the things I do is I meditate, and I just think about, it really is about, I say, come on, God, universe, I'm ready for it. Whatever it is, whatever the next journey is, whatever the next thing in my life that comes along, I'm ready. Let's just do this thing. I want to experience life, and I want to be able to, and I think that's the really important thing, is to experience it and to live it, and to understand that when we start on our journeys and we just allow the universe to take us, you start to find an inner peace which radiates out, and other people start to notice it. All of a sudden, a lot of the things you may still get, we all get little worries and little niggles, but some of the things which were really important or made you worry, which could be to do with money and could be to do with all these kinds of day-to-day worries that we have, gradually they become less and less and less significant. As your spiritual path grows and grows and grows, it kind of pushes those things out. And what begins to happen is the people around you start to notice that you're living your life differently, and they might not be able to put their finger on it straight away. But it's kind of like, there's something different about you. There's something that you're doing differently. And when you start radiating your truth, and you start to glow with this new path that you're on, that's how you change people's minds. And that's how other people start to see that maybe you've got something right in your life, and that's how you change minds with this, not through words. Again, as you said, words don't carry power, but how we act and how we behave and how we live our lives does. So when we start to find ourselves moving into alignment, other people do, and it's kind of a snowball effect. We start to find that because we've changed within, everything outside starts to change as well, and we end up moving on that path, and that alignment with our soul and with the universe becomes so much easier, because you start to get into the universal flow. And when things start to flow, things just happen. and your path becomes much, much easier. But I don't want to say it's not easy to begin with. So, it can be a bit difficult. It's not don't expect everything to be instantly easy. It comes over time, years even. And gradually you start to notice the difference. But as far as techniques and as far as actually finding your way forward, the most important technique is meditation. For me, more than anything, meditation has been the absolute key to unlocking ways of thinking that I have never thought of before, being able to see things I'd never be able to see before, it's changed me. So that is the one thing that I would say to people is really the key to expanding your awareness of your consciousness or your consciousness. So.
And you're actually going to invite our audience to a meditation that you've prepared. Is that?
Yes. Yeah. It's
about it.
It's a meditation that came to me, and it was inspired, I feel, by something greater than me. Meditation is called Connecting with Spirit, the Universal Wisdom. And it really is about connecting with our spiritual nature, whether that's the universe, whether it's our angels or spirit guides or our friends and family that have passed over as well. It's about exploring our own spiritual truth. The universe will give us whatever we want, and it will give us whatever we expect to find. So it's very much about making sure that we set our intentions to find what we want to find, and then allowing ourselves to go on this journey. But it's been a very powerful meditation for myself, and it's a guided meditation, and it allows some time of just reflection as well. So, and I think that's important in the meditation, that there's not talking all the way through. It gives you some time to just sit with what you've found and to see what you can discover. And if you use it regularly, it can help with your intuition, psychic awareness, and your awareness of spirit as well.
Beautiful, thank you. Now, we're talking, the words that come up the most are this going with the flow and letting it permeate through ourselves and what surrounds us, because as our vibration changes, our way of thinking changes, our perspective changes, so does our reality have to change. One thing that often comes up is, so can I just let things happen? And that at some level we always are letting things happen, and do I need to act? Do I need to change things more? Do I need to be proactive? What's your take on that, finding that balance?
It is about finding a balance. I mean, we have to always remember that, there's positive thinking and there's positive action. So you need both. You need to think in the right way, and you also need to act in the right way to attract these things to us as well. The universe, the problem is our intelligence, if you want to call human beings intelligent, enables us to control the world around us, the physical world around us. But that's in conflict with our spiritual sides, because we don't really have full control over that. Being as it is very much, but it's greater than us. It's far more powerful than us, and we're a part of it as well. It's almost like a river rushing downstream, and you can try to stand against it if you want, but you're going to get bashed by all the logs and the stones being pulled down that stream. But if you just allow yourself to go with it, you can enjoy the journey, and hopefully you're going to float on the top, and you're going to see all the beautiful forest around you as well as you go down this stream. So it is about letting go. And when you do, you find that the universe or God or whatever, there does seem to be a bit of a plan there. There does seem to be a path of it. The universe wants you to be happy. The universe wants you to be abundant, to have all the things to give you a comfortable life. But when we start trying to force things in certain directions, it might not be where the universe, this universal flowing river, actually wants to take us. And it might be that we're starting to battle against the current again, which is what I was doing when I had my business and I was living my life in a very different way. So when you start battling against it, then you start to find these hurdles, and people say, wow, my life just seems to be going wrong all the time. Why isn't it going right? Well, it's only going wrong because that's what your expectation is. That's where you're trying to push your life. If you just say, okay, I'm ready for it, let's just see what happens. The universe has a way of sorting things out for you, and things start to fall into place just naturally without having to push them in our very human-like way of trying to get things to do what we want them to do. We have a really, our human mind is limited. The universe is completely unlimited. So just trust in the universe because it knows better than us. And if you trust and if you give yourself to the universe, you'll be in that flow and things will just happen. So it is about trust and having faith that everything will be all right.
Beautiful. And when it comes to positive action, which is a term that I really like, how can we detect?
Okay. It has to come about through, you're presented with opportunities, but you have to make sure that, say, for example, people say, oh, when am I going to find love? I need to find somebody. I want to be in love. It's like, okay, but you don't go out. you don't go out. It's going to be, the universe will try its hardest to give you what you want, but if you don't make it easy, it's going to become much more difficult for those opportunities to come your way. So it's not about saying, right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to make this happen. It's just about saying, I'm going to put myself in the right place to enable the right things to happen. Or to allow those opportunities to flow to me. So it's not about hiding ourselves away or expecting that miracles are going to happen if we don't put ourselves out there a little bit as well. So your positive action, but it's not saying that, about taking back control. It's about just giving the universe the opportunity to give us those miracles.
Beautiful. And so there's this nurturing of opportunities. Is that I kind of like that idea. Nurturing.
Yeah, I think it's
action.
It's, I suppose it is. And if you pray or if you meditate or if you ask for something to happen, ask for the opportunities for things to happen, ask to be presented with opportunities. It's about also noticing those signs. A lot of us go through life with blinkers on, and we don't look and we don't notice. And we're, this, as you said before, we live in such a busy world. We've got the TV, we've got the internet, we've got everything going on all the time, really busy lives and busy jobs. And sometimes we don't notice those opportunities. So it is almost about learning to just look a bit wider, use your peripheral vision, because you'll start to notice that there are a lot more opportunities and a lot more signs are being sent to you than you might have realized at first.
Yeah, and it kind of becomes a game. We often speak of, for me, of angels or spirit guides being a little bit playful, and it's that listening to the inner voice, and then there's kind of that connection that happens. And you're like, oh yes, I should have done that.
Yeah, absolutely. And and it is about being sensitive enough to see those signs and to really realize that it's not going to be well, it could be, but it's not often a big booming voice from the sky that's going to give you some powerful message. It's about really noticing those subtle signs, and the subtle signs that we get from angels or spirit guides and God and the universe. It's exactly the same as the subtle signs that we start to be given for opportunities as well. It could be that you just say, hold on, I've read something that's talking about a such and such a place, and maybe I'll go there, maybe I'll see what happens. And you just go with this flow, and but without expectation. It's about always being grateful for everything that we experience and everything that we receive, but without expecting that something is going to happen, or an expectation of exactly what is going to happen. That's what we have to let go of.
Mm-hmm. So there's the implementation of an intent, but then that openness to the intent having a form that we can't really expect or fathom beforehand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm an entrepreneur, and when it comes to this sense of developing my power as an entrepreneur, as a woman, in the spiritual realm, and otherwise, I feel like there's a lot of energy being spent and pushing too hard, and it's really difficult to gauge just how much fuel to put in. And it comes back to what you just said. But I'm wondering if there's maybe an extra little intuition that comes to you about how to gauge that, how to know, okay, there's positive action, there's intent that comes beforehand. How do we not get lost in all of that?
You have to follow your heart, and you still do in business as well. And when you're on the right track in business, things just flow and things just happen, and you create, and good things come from the creations that you're making as well. So, and it becomes this kind of ripple effect and this flow that goes out, and you start to attract the right people towards you. But you have to, again, watch for the signs and watch how you're feeling inside as well, because you might come across people in business that you think, not sure about this person. Trust that instinct. Go with that gut instinct, because if that's what you feel, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be right. It might be much later on down the line once you've actually committed to that person in some kind of business contract. So just listen to what you're feeling inside, because I again, apply the same principles to your business. Business doesn't, it's us that we kind of draw this, we create this business life, work life, and our private life, and we put this line in between. And while some people will say it's healthy to divide the two, if you're doing something that you love, it doesn't feel like work anyway. And you'll enjoy it, and you'll go with it, and it gives you that extra drive and passion to do it. So again, for most people in business, I'd always say, have a look at, are you enjoying what you do? Does it make you want to get up and work? Does it make you want to do it? For the work that I do, I could just keep working until the early hours of the morning, which I do sometimes, and wake up, and it's the first thing I want to do. And it's because I love it, and I love doing what I do, and I couldn't think of doing anything else in this world that would ever give me so much joy. And to be able to help people, we are in service. And a lot of us, when we're spiritually aware and we take that into our business practice, it doesn't matter whether you're a spiritual teacher or guide, or whether you're a dentist or whatever. If you do it with love, and you do it with in service of those other people, to make their lives better, it brings a joy. It brings something different to a different aspect to your work as well. So it doesn't matter what job you're doing. If it's helping, and if it's helping people, and it's doing good in the world, then keep doing it.
I think these are beautiful words to finish on. Thank you so much for joining us today. Your joy in sharing, they just transpire through. So it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Sabine. It's been lovely speaking with you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.